This is James Thornock. Thanks for coming to the Coder Kids podcast again and giving us a listen. Here on the program today, we have Alexandra. If you'd like to introduce yourself, she's from startpage.com. Go ahead.
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name's Alexandra, and I'm the general manager of Startpage, which it has been running the world's most private search engine for 17 years, and has now expanded beyond that to offer a suite of privacy technology tools. We are based in the Netherlands, so we like to say that affords us much stronger privacy protection laws than US-based companies. But we're really trying to work to grow privacy awareness in the United States as well as globally. So very excited to be here.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, actually, I did 17 years. That's quite a long time in internet years, you know.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, it's been a long time when things were very different back then. I've only been on Startpage since 2018, so I'm newer to it, but there's a really long and interesting history there.
Well, that is really cool. We'll have to probably dig into that in another time. But obviously, you joined Startpage in 2018. I kind of want to go a little bit further back and ask you, how did you get interested in tech in the first place and like how it impacts our lives and that stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, I've always been interested in STEM, even growing up as a kid. And when I went to college, I started out majoring in chemical engineering and at Princeton. And one of the prerequisites for that was a computer science class. And I took that and opened a whole new world, a whole new way for my brain to think, and some really interesting problem solving opportunities that I hadn't been exposed to before. So I really loved that. I switched over to computer science, which was quite the whirlwind, learning
Yeah.
about this whole world of things that some people have been doing their whole lives, and kind of catching up there. But it was really exciting, and I loved that. And once I left university, I went to a company called Textile, which is a fashion e-commerce subscription company, and I was working on their email development team. From there, I moved to product and was in product for like 7 years, and then moved to and as part of that, I moved to product within Startpage. And as someone who's always been passionate about data privacy, that was really exciting for me. And then I worked on the product side here at Startpage for a while, and finally moved to the business side. So still very tech focused, but excited to bring Startpage to a lot more users.
Yeah, well, that's super awesome. One of the things that I super appreciate and I feel like really privileged to be able to say is that like I'm working on the same thing that is my mission. I feel like in life, and so I don't know if you consider that for yourself, but it seems like it's a pretty decent thing that you're trying to do with Startpage. Do you want to talk about like the mission behind it and like how you feel about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I also feel fortunate because I'm naturally a more private person before this. And so getting to work on that and explain why privacy is important to more people is something that's really exciting for me. And it's a nice role that we take, I think, in the search industry. So it's a great place to be at. And part of our mission is both to bring privacy tools to people around the world. uh, we have a strong following in people that are very privacy aware. And I think we're trying to expose more people who are just finding out why data privacy is so important through various news articles and events or issues, breaches with other companies.
Right.
Or, but also in addition to that, just the education. So both offering the tools and explaining to people why using such tools or other tools is so important.
Yeah. So, this is a question that I actually meant to ask you before. Um, was just I'm a pretty public person. I'm obviously doing this podcast. There's a lot of information about me out there of my own free will and choice. So for someone who might be like me, who maybe doesn't feel like they have anything to hide, what is what can be useful about privacy? Can you put it kind of into that context?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of reasons why someone might want to use privacy tools, even if they're feeling, well, I'm not a very private person. Like I love social media or I have an online presence or I'm a public figure,
Hmm.
all of these reasons. But I like to equate it to, if you're walking down the street, you wouldn't tell a stranger, hey, this is my social security number, or here's a fact about me that no one knows. Whereas you wouldn't think twice about typing it into your search engine.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
everyone does have levels of what disclosure they give to different people in their life, but that goes out the window when a screen is in front of you because you're like, this isn't a real person. I'm just looking stuff up on the internet, and you don't think that there are people behind that are then distributing that to other people who look at that. So there is an unease that you can get from that, just that alone, but also what people can do with it is show you higher prices for items because they know you live in a zip code that has a higher income on average than the national average, or
yeah.
they know you shop for certain things so they can show you other things, or even on the politics side they know you lean one way so they can show you news that intentionally makes you upset. So there's both the unease and the actual repercussions of what someone can do with your data.
Yeah, that's such a poignant point, right? That like if you were handing someone like a file folder of all of your personal details, like you'd seriously not do that. Unless it's maybe a
Yeah,
government agency and you have to. You don't even want to,
right.
but you have to, right? For like a marriage certificate or something. Um,
Sure.
yeah, I remember that actually, like going into a government office and paying $75 and, giving them all my info and they're like, okay, you're officially married. It's like, wow, that was, rather, not romantic at all. And he's like, now you have my data. That's great. And the marriage we had in the church was much better, but yeah, it's so interesting that the way that you interact in person, it's like, well, on the other side of the screen there are other people that can use that information, and that they have that. um, yeah, one of the questions I have is kind of about intentions, right? um, here at Coder Kids, we're a company, and a company is just a kind of group of people and technology tools. And I like to believe that we have pretty good intentions here. We want to see kids grow up and be exposed to coding, like yourself at Princeton, which wonderful opportunity sounds like for you. Um, and we want to expose kids to these ideas pretty young, so I think that's a pretty positive thing. um, it's hard obviously for you to speak about the intentions of giant and mega corporations, but can you speak to the intentions of maybe even like the founders of Startpage, or just about like what you hope to bring about with this search engine and extension, but also just like the tool in general.
Sure. And I will add also, as far as the mega corporations, it's not like they have intentionally bad intentions either. It's the intention is just to make money. And the question is, what are
Sure.
you willing to do to make the most money that you can? And a lot of times that ends up falling into take advantage of all of the data that you have available to you and all of the optimizations that you can do on that. And then the person that loses out is the consumer, even
Hmm.
if the intention is not to hurt the consumer. But so then, on Startpage, obviously we also do want to gain users and make money. The sacrifice that we make and the level that we stop at is that tracking. So we say, okay, we do show ads on our search engine.
Hmm.
We would make a lot more money if we could show targeted ads to everyone, because as we know, that is very successful. But then, the brand promise and the mission of Startpage is just to bring the same results to everyone that
Yeah.
you'd see no matter what your financial status is, or if you're on an Apple or an Android product, or all these other factors that tech companies use to target you with things. We take that out of the equation. So, um, So then, yeah, there is that kind of what is the line that a company is willing to draw to protect the consumer or to take advantage of the consumer. And we have a pretty solid, firm line in our privacy policy that we will not go beyond.
Yeah, well, that's really awesome. I mean, what do you feel about the right to be forgotten and things like that? And that really hasn't caught on in the U.S. necessarily just yet, but
I mean, that's great. I think that's a great step is, being able to get the fragments of you off of the internet. It's something that we've definitely had questions come into us before on, and we've fortunately been able to say we don't track anything in the first place. So there's nothing for us to delete from our servers. So that's always refreshing, but it is nice to get to go through these mechanisms to remove information from the internet. And it's also fun because it's quite the data headache for these big companies. So
oh yeah.
kind of fun to think about how tough that probably is for them.
Yeah, well, and you're pretty savvy too. I mean, you know about like database management at least on a cursory level too. So like that's pretty important. Like there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. I think you were saying before that like it's hard to actually not track. Like it's harder to not track. So,
Yeah, it's definitely you have to do more work to make sure you're not logging things. But then on the flip side, we don't have to go through all the database headaches of having to remove certain rows because a user, sent you a postcard saying that they want that removed. So,
right.
you know,
Yeah, well, that does make so it's harder up front, but then like easier on the back end, basically.
right. And same, if we got a government audit, right? And like, hey, send us everything you have. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, good luck.
It's like
There's
here it
nothing
is,
here. Yeah.
congratulations. So, oh, that's great.
Exactly.
That's awesome. One question I wanted to ask you, and then I'll let you go. You've got a lot of important things to do. You got to let the world know about this. And that is, if well, and I am a dad, but if I'm a mom or a dad, and my kids are online and they're searching stuff up, um, how should I think about my own privacy and how should I think about my kids in that context? Is there anything we can do essentially to protect ourselves or just be smart about things or understand the bargain that we're doing in that moment?
Definitely. I mean, I think it's easy to initially think about parental controls on a device, and then you forget about the other side, which is, what are the sites you're visiting seeing about your child versus just what is your child seeing on a device.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
man.
and luckily, like there are a lot of resources for how to adjust device settings for things like the camera being on even or location settings or what can apps track about me, that there are nice resources and tools to educate yourself on what your device allows you to do and then set those such that you're protecting your kid as much as you can. So the government's not going to do a lot to protect your kids, so it unfortunately does end up the burden falls on the parents to set those restrictions and understand, at the very least, be educated on what people could be seeing about you and your family. Every time you do anything online, you're dropping little tidbits or breadcrumbs about yourself that someone can use to scoop up and aggregate together into a profile. And that happens thanks to cookies or other trackers that sites are dropping. It also happens from your search engine if you use a non-private search engine. And all of these data sources can be put together to then be used sometimes for your convenience, but sometimes to take advantage of you to encourage you to buy stuff, even to shape what types of political slant news you're seeing, potentially to make you intentionally angry. If someone leans left, they're going to show you right facing news or vice versa, just because you're going more likely to click on it, to share it and say how mad it makes you, but then that site gets your visit. So kind of like you were saying before, it's not for your advantage. You're the product.
Well, yeah, that's pretty heavy. So, taking into account the fact that we are sometimes the product here, is there anything that we can do to protect ourselves and our kids?
So there's lots of things that you can do. First, be conscious of the device you're using. Like, we know that Apple has lots of built-in tools that you can use to block requests to track you from various apps and sites. But also there are third-party tools that you can add to your browser that block cookies and trackers and just show you what they are. So you wouldn't expect that you go to a news site and you see that there's actually 30 different other sites tracking you that you would think have nothing to do with the site, but that site is selling everything and into this great bidding auction about your data to all of these other companies like Facebook. But Startpage makes one such service called Startpage Privacy Protection, which is an extension that you can install that does that blocking for you. And it's just one of the many tools that you can use to educate yourself on what's going on, be surprised by it, like what sites are trying to track you more or less, and then kind of calibrate what you're doing based on that knowledge.
So, as far as the tool itself, is it also trying to educate? Can you explain that?
Absolutely. I think I found is the most it's like the most powerful part than even the privacy side, like because people don't realize what the stakes are if you're just saying, "Hey, here's something private." That's great, but hey, look at what you wouldn't, what would be happening if you didn't have this tool, or look at what the state of things are today. I mean, just when I have the extension installed, I block thousands of trackers in a 2-week period. So it's just like an incredible amount of data that I wouldn't have otherwise knew was happening behind the scenes.
So, I really want to know, what is the point in the sense that, like, okay, so now this company has this information. Can you explain, like, what are they going to do with that?
That's No, that's totally right. And there's, like you said, not to be too fear mongering here, but then there's companies like the credit agencies, for example, in the U.S. who are data brokers, is what we call them. That their whole job is to then aggregate everything that they get from everywhere into a profile, and they have these catchy names for all the profiles too. Like if you're a mom between the ages of 30 to 40 who loves wine, like that is a profile. And they have a bunch of people in there, and then they sell those thousands of times a day, even millions of times a day, to different companies that could profit off of that data to sell you stuff.
Well, that's pretty crazy. In that context, let's say, like, and this is a little bit strange scenario, but say I have a phone and maybe my kid gets a hold of it, starts searching stuff. Can Google or other search engines connect that data? Does that create like separate profiles? Does it know if it's me or not? What is it doing behind the scenes? Do you know how these things work?
I mean, I think it's hard to say exactly. Obviously, these companies' algorithms are just extraordinarily sophisticated. So I wouldn't be surprised if they could segregate that out, different person's activity within the same device or session, because yeah, if you're like me, you're so stream of consciousness when you search stuff all day that your search engine and browser probably know you better than anyone else in your life. So something that isn't, like an outlier outside of what your normal activity is could be said, hey, this might be a different person. Let's show them different types of stuff and think about those two people differently. But I'm not sure. I don't know exactly.
One of the terms I've heard floating around is this like right to be forgotten stuff. Um, what's your kind of position on that?
Yes, no, it's funny because we actually have gotten requests for this before. We're like, "Hey, I'd like, all this stuff removed about me," and we are fortunate in being able to respond, "Well, we don't actually have anything on you, so you guys, you're good to go. Go talk to Google and Bing and the other companies."
So, you're really not keeping a ton of data on people, which is really good. But can you explain, like, how does that look like in a physical reality?
Yeah. So, well, the value proposition of Startpage and why it stands out is that promise not to track and to be able to serve best in class search results without having big tech keeping that profile on you. Um, so that's really always been our backbone and thesis is the not tracking. And of course, with that, then you are making financial sacrifices, obviously, because these other companies, we've seen that the way that they're able to make so much money is through ad targeting and building these profiles. So there is this balance, and it's just something that we've been able to be successful building a really strong user base because people care about the privacy promise that we're doing. So then that ends up letting us continue to iterate and introduce new privacy products for free because we have such passionate users. But we don't, we have nothing that's user identifying. We don't have your IP address. We don't have any previous searches that you made, really nothing. All we know is like usage metrics on our system. We power our, not to get too technical, but we power our own physical hardware as well. So there's no cloud infrastructure. Yeah, yeah, we have like actual rack space at data centers that are in locked cabinets that are like we have the keys to. So yeah, so like all the way up and down there, it's Startpage owned and it's really a safe brand promise. But yeah, so then we know like traffic coming in and out, stuff like that, like aggregate metrics of load, but nothing user identifying.
I mean, obviously, it sounds like you're providing a ton of value. Can you explain a little bit, like, how does Startpage actually make money at the end of the day? Coder Kids, we sell summer camps. What is it exactly that you're providing?
Oh yeah, so the way that we make money right now is through is still through ads, like what we call contextual ads on our search engine. So the difference is that when you search for, summer camps, the ads that you might get at the top are going to be the same ads that I would get if I search summer camps. They're going to be the same for everyone in the world. So, and you have the option not to click on them, but we have like a unique contract that allows us to serve ads within our privacy promise so that the ad network doesn't get any information about you when you're viewing them. So yeah, so we call those contextual ads versus behavioral ads.
You know, what you're talking about actually reminds me of something kind of in the earlier days of the internet where, I'd go on the internet to be exposed to kind of new and interesting things that I wasn't going to normally be exposed to in my life. I think I found out about bird watching or something online or something like that that none of the people I talked to did, and none of like it just there's no way I would have really run into it. I certainly would have run into birds in my life, but just wouldn't have found that particular hobby out. So I'm curious, how does this work? Like, are we all seeing like the same ads, or um, is this more like the old version of the internet or the new version of the internet, or can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right because not just in search, but in all of everything that uses targeting and social media and news sites, everything else, like you are pigeonholed into what the algorithms think you like, meaning it's discovery is so much harder. So you're seeing the same things, even when you see I know on shopping sites, you're being shown from the same brands every time, the ones that they know you like. So then how do you ever find anything new to buy? So there's definitely that symptom of the lack of discovery in current culture with how much tracking is involved that using private browsers, private search engines can help you get there.
Right on. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So where should people go to, really like find out more like about their privacy in general? Like, are there some good general like sites that you can find out information on, and then also, about your page?
There's a lot of great sites that are tools that you can use both to see like what's happening on my browser right now, and they can show you who's trying to track you. as well as maybe I can send you a couple links after that you can post
Yeah.
for some good resources as well as our extension.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for coming on the program. Like, is there anything that you would think is just essential to know just about privacy in general? Maybe I didn't give you the opportunity to talk about.
Yeah, I've one other thing that I think is just really it stays on my mind a lot is that something that we hear a lot about is HIPAA rights in the
Okay.
world, like, not sharing medical information. Your doctor can't legally tell anyone anything. That doesn't really exist on the internet. And so anything that you're searching medical wise about yourself, about your children can be sold and then
Oh,
used
wow.
against you. So that's something that I am really passionate about. The health and mental health side of things is so much more important to use private tools because you wouldn't tell someone on the street if you had some sort of medical problem, but putting it into a non-private tool is kind of doing just that.
Wow, yeah. I guess I haven't thought about that either. Wow.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's one thing if you're like, hey, I need to, bandage a cut or something. And then obviously another if you're having like a rare medical or genetic disease or something. Yeah, that.
And also like, with women's health tracking apps are like I think in the last month exposed to be selling the data to advertisers as well. So to the point where
Oh,
they might
wow.
know you're pregnant before you know you're pregnant.
Yeah.
So it's so hard to know who to trust, but
Oh my
just,
gosh.
it makes you want to be aware of that.
Yeah, yeah. I think there was a story once where it was Target was sending ads, like physical, like paper ads in the mail to, this could be apocryphal for all I know, but it was sending these ads to a residence for someone who was like, underage or whatever. Um, and parents got like super, super mad and, called Target and like ratted them, read them the riot act and they profusely apologized and then like 2 weeks later they found out she was pregnant, right? And so it was just
Yeah.
like it was a crazy crazy story where it's like Target stuff and their data was like pretty good and so they recommended bottles and formula and things like that would actually be useful. And
And
gosh,
it's
we
totally
have bought
legal to
so
do
many.
that.
Yeah, oh yeah. And diapers are great. We have bought so many diapers recently, with the newborn. But yeah, that's a pretty intense thing. And I think you're right. Like it's so important to know when, like, if you're say vlogging your life, you know like I know the words that I say. Like these are now on the internet. I'm broadcasting those. I'm sharing those with the world, right? But
Right.
if you don't know, if it's 1 a.m. and you're searching up something random, like you're also kind of broadcasting that, right? And
Yeah.
so definitely important to be able to, protect your kids and yourself as well to really understand that. And so that's something, the reason why I chose to, pick up this, you as an interviewee here, on the Carter Kids podcast is because at the end of the day, we're trying to give parents tools that they can use for themselves and their families. And so like that's why I think this topic is just so important. So.
Well, yeah, thanks. I mean, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
It's been great.
Well, and thank you, in advance for sending me those links. I will go ahead and
Yeah.
put those in the description of the video as well, so that you can see and have access to that. And then, in that, any kind of way to contact you as well, we should be able to put in there as well as I said the browser extension is typically how you do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send you all of that stuff.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, and have a good
Thank
one.
you.
All right.
Likewise. Talk
All
to you
right.
later.